Good evening. I'm John Campbell, the chairman of the Community Preservation Committee. This open meeting of the Community Preservation Committee, which I will call CPC, is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the CPC are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. This order allows the CPC to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. So with that, we'll get our meeting underway. If everyone doesn't mind, could you also identify yourself as a committee member, starting with Leslie?
Good evening, I'm Leslie Harrison.
Peter Martin.
Todd Elwig.
Jeff Leland.
And Kathy Juber, town planner and staff liaison to the CPC.
Great, thank you, everyone. We're going to begin at the top of our agenda tonight. We're here to discuss the application for CPA funds by the Disc Golf Group. I'll refer you back to our January 9th open hearing at which we reviewed all the applications to the CPC for this year. And the disc golf was our last presentation, if you recall. We heard an enthusiastic presentation. We voted to approve the application by unanimous vote on that night. Since that time for review, first I should point out, and it may not have been clear to all of us committee members at the time, but the project to create disc golf on the land around the senior center and on the Edmund Hill Woods property had been previously brought to the Recreation Commission. They had approved it in 2019, and they had also gone before the Conservation Commission and received their permission also in 2019. The application to community preservation was originally made in August 2019, and as I say, appeared before us in January 2020. Subsequent to that vote, sometime in March, it was observed by members of the Conservation Committee and others that trees had been cut on the land where the disc golf course was planned. The Conservation Commission had originally allowed small branches or small trees below 2 inches diameter to be cut to allow the course to be made. I'll refer you back to their application, by the way, where they had said in their words that no land needed to be cleared and that only small branches and logs on the ground would be needed to be cleared. It turned out that it was observed more than 70 trees had already been removed in March that were greater than 2-inch diameter. I observed this personally and saw that in several areas, large swaths of the woods were cleared out to make it easier to throw the discs. And while I recognize that that was maybe determined to be needed by the golf group, it was not only different than what had been written to us, but it violated the regulations around the conservation land and also the permissions granted by the Conservation Commission. And so a cease and desist was issued, and subsequent in June, much more cutting was observed. And so it was at that point that Conservation Commission put it on their agenda to review whether the permission should be rescinded. And in fact, cutting to the chase, last night at the Conservation Commission meeting, they voted unanimously to remove permission for the project. We also have a letter from the Recreation Commission from Ally Lane, who was the original sponsor of the application. She also removed support for the disc golf project. So our task, as I see it, is to, taking that into account, determine whether we should reconsider our vote for the project to get funded and brought to town meeting. If I missed anything from the Conservation Commission perspective, Todd, would you fill in? And otherwise, any questions or comment by the committee?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is when we heard that from the project proponents last night, I mean, there was no real feeling that they were involved in the damage. The issue was we just lost confidence that they would be able to control others that were doing this in the future. And because of that, as the land stewards, we just couldn't see it going forward.
They were implying, if I'm not incorrect, that it was not the applicants, David and his partner or wife, not sure who Kelly was.
Steve and Kelly.
Yeah, Steve, I'm sorry. Steve Dakai, is that pronunciation? So he was the core sponsor. He was implying it was not him and not in his group. I believe he spoke to those words. So we're to assume it's others who either like disc golf and thought they should be cleared, or others who just wanted to cut trees.
Yeah.
So to furthering your point, I shared the same concern that there would be control over how the project got finished, number one. Number two, did it indicate behavior in the future that might not be in keeping with the way the project was proposed? I also would note that during the Conservation Commission meeting, there was one neighbor on Edmonds Hill Way, which essentially is parallel to what would have been Fairway 2 of the disc golf map. And they had some concern. They expressed that they were unaware of the project in the first place and unaware that it was starting. It's the first abutter that I know of that expressed any concern, although I know other trail walkers had seen it and had raised question. Kathy, go ahead.
John, I just wanted to point out for others, I know Todd is aware of this, but the staff and various members of the staff have been, since the violations started occurring, are out there on a weekly basis. So the conservation agent, and this goes towards what you were talking about is the trust and, and who is doing this and not, not being able to physically keep track of who's doing the violations. The conservation agent is out there once a week walking the entire site. The rec director is also out there once a week walking the entire site. And then we talked with the police chief and asked him if he could get involved in trying to figure out who was doing what up there. And so every shift, every day, there is a Northborough policeman at the site, and they I don't believe that they walk all 18 holes, but they have certainly made notes of cutting that they've observed, and also signs that the town put up requesting people to stop doing the cutting, and all of our signs were removed by somebody. So it has been a very well patrolled site, but yet this tree cutting and continued clearing is still occurring.
Yeah, Leslie, you're muted.
Yep. did they even have permission? I'm a little confused about the timing of this too, because this is funding for next year. And you pointed this out at the Concom meeting last night, John, that did they even have permission to start on this project? And what did they need the funding for if they're basically completed it without our funding?
If you look at their application budget, some of the funding was for signage, some of it was for leveling and creating a so-called tee box. Some of it was for the baskets themselves that create the hole. None of that had been installed.
I thought the baskets, didn't they say last night the baskets and signs were there?
The last time I saw, there was buckets on top of posts where the baskets would go. I don't know.
Oh,
Kathy,
okay.
did you see
Okay. Yeah, I
one?
don't know anything about the sport. Okay.
Yeah.
But even to my point, did they have permission to start?
Yes, we had, and this is often the case with work that's been regulated by the Conservation Commission, that as long as you're in, compliance with the order or the notice that you've received from the Conservation Commission, you can go in and start to do, work. It's at your discretion, but also, yes, is there a possibility that the funding, go back 3 or 4 months, before all of this occurred, but so that, you do proceed at your own risk. But in this particular case, what the Conservation Commission granted them to be able to do was so minimal. I mean, literally, I don't remember the exact amount of trees, Todd, but I mean, I think it was, like 5 trees on that entire site. And 5 might be too much.
Right.
And so Mia, what our conservation agent was, yep, you can go ahead, work with your, with the decision that you received from the Conservation Commission. And then when she went out there and, saw the devastation, basically.
It's a game played in the forest, they told us.
Yes. Yeah, and as
They
I
removed
think
the
as
forest.
everyone can see from the pictures that I had sent you, that again, our conservation agent had taken, someone really did make big, clear fairways.
And then went back in again after. I mean, it's the repeated violations
Right,
too.
and then
Busy,
everything, once they got their cease and desist, that was adhered to for a couple of weeks maybe, and all the saplings, the very small, very small, less than 2-inch, in caliper, they all started sprouting, as we all know. You just cut a birch in your yard, and a week later you've got these sprouts. But yeah, somebody then went in and took all those out.
So I know this is getting beyond what we need to decide tonight, but what further recourse does the town have, or anybody have, if this cutting and clearing continues?
Well, the good thing is how fast things grow back when, it's going to return to, brush very soon. Todd may know more technicalities than I do, but the applicants last night at the Conservation Commission, said that they would go in this weekend, remove all of their equipment, notify all of their members, and then as staff, we're just going to have to continue to patrol it, to make sure that nobody's up there, and then if continue with the police patrol, but hopefully the message will get out from Steve and Kelly, that that the project, I mean, assuming what your vote might be tonight, but that the project has been canceled.
Todd, can you think of any precedent for anything like this that you experienced with Concom on a project?
Not on that. I mean, we obviously having similar issues on Mount Pisgah, and
Yeah, I'm
the
still unknown.
destruction of trees for recreational purposes is a consistent theme. But my guess is once the buckets and it would be really hard to open that up again to use it for anything else. So I think once the project is dead and the buckets are removed, in a year, no one, it'd be hard to tell anything happened there.
Well, and what about future planning off of this experience? So first of all, on the timing part, like Leslie mentioned, I was unaware that they, had permission to begin. And if we are funding something, maybe we need to be asking that at the time of the application. And then secondly, well, because it hadn't begun, I guess we didn't know to ask if any management, was taking place. But I guess
Well,
they
It was
needed more
partly the job of the
supervision. clearly.
Conservation Commission, right? I mean, we manage the land. And so if somebody comes to ask us to do something on the land, we can give them permission to do it. They were
Right.
able to do what they could do without money. So, until they got to the point where they needed the money, they had permission to do it.
I hear you. Well, at any rate, I found it disappointing because I got enthused about it at the time of the application. It seemed like a neat thing, but I think I've learned that we got to look a little closer.
You want a motion?
I believe we need to allow public comment. There are two guests, and I need
Actually,
to
John,
know-
if you but before you go to the guest, one of the names is actually your new board secretary, who I absolutely should have introduced in the very beginning of this meeting. Melanie doesn't show up as a talking head on the meetings, but she is listening. So it's Melanie Rich. Melanie's been in our office for a couple of years
Okay.
as a part-time administrative assistant to the Conservation Commission, and then recently took on the Elaine Rose job, who is phasing into retirement from public work. So Melanie is now doing the planning board, and this is her first community preservation committee meeting. So I think that you only have one member of the
Okay.
public.
Welcome, Melanie. Then we have one guest, I believe, Henry Squilante, if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not sure how to enable him, but you are a panelist, so you may speak.
No, I didn't raise my hand, so I shouldn't be a panelist.
That's okay. I'll let you in. Henry, could you give us your full name and address as you would
Yeah,
pronounce
Henry
it?
Squilante, 72 Crestwood Drive. I was typically, when you attend these, you have to raise your hand before you recognize, and I was just listening. I didn't want to make any comments.
No problem. Yeah, I had let you in as a panelist. I thought that was my job, but anyway, you're here.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything to say, so.
Oh, okay. Well, very good. You're welcome to continue.
John, you're reproducing here.
I don't know why that is. I think we have Andy. Says his name is John. But I believe Andy Clark was joining. He's a member of the committee. As soon as he finds out how to. You there, Andy? I can see you.
There he
Okay,
is.
I'm in there. Sorry about that.
No trouble. So you're not another John Campbell. Thank God for you, but that's how you're listed.
Because I followed the link that you sent me.
Well, there you go. Anyway, then
That's
for the
really not
record, Andy Clark is joined. And Andy, brief summary, we just got done talking about the disc golf application. And long story short, the Conservation Commission voted to rescind their authorization for the project. And the Recreation Commission sent a letter removing their support as well as a result of their unauthorized excessive tree cutting on the property that had been noted in the memo sent to you.
Yep.
So we're at the point.
Did you vote on it?
No, we're right at the point of concluding our discussion or any comments, so chime in if you like.
My only comment at this point would be, if we don't move forward with it, we've chopped down the trees and we don't have trees or a golf course or a disc golf course. So I'm using the philosophy of sunk costs. So in the accounting way, so you've already lost what you didn't want to lose, but so now you have nothing to show for it. So proceeding, maybe not with this group, but you know, it's, the trees are gone. So no, we won't have our disc golf trees or anything. But that's just my view of it. I'm sure it doesn't align with the Conservation Commission.
Well, there was, just to fill you in, both on that meeting and some of our discussion, some trees do grow back. We know that. I think that wasn't the only point. There was a concern about the disregard for the regulations of the land and the permissions given by the Concom, and therefore concern going forward. Was it an indication of the behavior of the group going forward, and what else might go wrong? There was a butter who had called in on that meeting, expressed concern. They didn't know what was happening. And so I think it was mainly just because of the way it had been done. Most of the Conservation Commission was vehement against going forward. We did discuss, or was floated a couple times, was there some middle ground, or was there some plan of resolution, but that commission didn't want to entertain it right now. I wouldn't say it's impossible that the idea would come back, but it would have to be reintroduced. So that's the way they laid it. And like I say, I spoke once with Ally privately, and then she submitted a letter. They were quite disappointed and removed their support as well. So at least those are the facts that we have.
No, I concur that they were jerks by their behavior and therefore unworthy of support, you know. Though I did see him building a bar along the net was consistent with golf, but no, I agree that they don't really, they did not behave in any way appropriate, and therefore, you know, they shouldn't be supported. But out of the end result is we have neither trees nor disc golf.
Hey, Todd, would you be able to repeat what you said before Andy got here about the regrowth and how long you thought it would take before
Wow.
it happened?
It's only the humble opinion of one real estate attorney, but I'd say probably in a year, it would be difficult to know that it was there. The damage had been done. I mean, the other thing just to keep in mind is the Conservation Commission revoked the permit to operate. So there is no disc golf. The only thing we have to decide is whether they're going to have money.
Yep, no money then.
Yeah, Peter.
I'd like to make a motion that the Community Preservation Committee rescind its approval of the disc golf project at Edmonds Way.
Second.
So there was a motion by Peter and a second by Todd. Any other questions before we vote? Okay, if not, we're going to vote by roll call. Leslie?
I'm in favor.
Very good. Todd?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes,
Jeff?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And this is John. I will vote yes as well. So it's 6-0 in favor of rescinding the application, which means we will not be presenting at town meeting the request for $26,071.
So John, what we'll do is we'll put together a motion for this to be passed over. And, you may or may not, sort of, given the time, given how many people are there still at town meeting, whether, what kind of explanation you want to go into, but usually, someone will give a, two-liner about why it's being passed over.
So, given that you said that, what would other committee members think? Should there be an explanation? Should I do something? Or I must say, before you said that, I would have been inclined just to say it's passed over. And if there were questions, to answer them, but otherwise not elaborate.
I agree with that.
Yep.
You could simply say, in light of the other subsequent decisions made by Concom and other bodies of the town, I thought it was appropriate to do that.
That would probably be fair to specifically mention the removal of support then, yeah.
Kathy, to the same point, was there talk about for the efficiency of town meeting of collapsing articles, like maybe collapsing all of the CPA funding articles into one? And would that affect the way something gets passed over if they were collapsed into one?
I had originally talked to, I thought that would be an option, and had talked a little bit, in more detail with the town administrator. And because each article is so different from the next, it doesn't really work for the CPC articles to bundle them all together and just take one vote.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad that was the direction, I think, in particular, the Assabet Park being so large and unique. It would have been one thing if we were just putting money into reserves primarily, but other than that article, it shouldn't be lengthy. Okay.
And John, I'm assuming, as it has been in the past, that you would be doing all of the motions for the articles.
I'm assuming same.
Okay.
I'm putting aside my Hawaiian vacation so I can be there.
Not COVID.
Mhm.
I can't wait to see what that looks like. I saw one photograph of a town, I think Acton or somebody was in the newspaper. It looked pretty strange.
Auburn did it out on their football field too, and it did. The picture was bizarre, as everything is right now.
I totally agree. Okay, well, the only other item, well, first of all, we have minutes. Might as well get that business out of the way. Since everyone, I'm sure, read it ahead of time,
Mhm.
could I have a motion for the minutes of March 5, 2020?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Jeff made a motion, Peter seconded for the minutes, and any discussion of the minutes? Otherwise, I'll take a roll call to approve the minutes of March 5. Leslie?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
And a yes from me. 6-0, we approve the minutes. We already briefly talked about town meetings, so we're done with that. The only other item I had wanted to bring up was about CPA recognition signs. And we talked about this more than 1 year. I know the sign examples that you brought up, Kathy, or copied in the emails were some that Andy had produced. And those seemed more like signs you would put up in when a project was in process. You know, almost like the banner size that was in front of the town common. And what I was really talking about was smaller plaques that would indicate, you know, this project funded by the Community Preservation Act, something to that effect. And so I wanted to get people's comment on that. You know, and I was thinking, just going back to certain things we've done, it could be sitting on the sidewalk in front of the properties at Main Street that are now affordable housing. It could be in front of the senior affordable apartments. It could be in the town common area, perhaps near one of the entrances along a sidewalk there. And in the town common case, not to steal from obviously the main memorial. And, you know, and I know there's another plaque being put up by the town common committee, and that's part of why the idea popped into my head. It would be, you know, it would, I don't see it as redundant to that so much as it's in a different spot. But so it was those kinds of things that I was thinking about. Anybody care about that?
Can I just give you a little bit of the plaques? Plaques are beautiful and they're durable and they'll last forever. Most of the ones come with a lifetime warranty situation, especially the cast bronze, cast aluminum ones that you see, when you typically envision a plaque. They work best when they can be mounted on a building or mounted on a stone or mounted on something that's equally permanent. You can put them on poles and posts and they do last quite a while. So they are typically they last for a long time and they're very durable, but they're not very prominent and they're usually ignored. How's that for, you know, unless they're really in your face, like when you enter something or someplace where, you come to a gate and you have to enter the gate and it's right there and you put it, but if you put it on a stone in the garden, it will be beautiful and it'll be there forever and no one will ever read it. So, you might want to think of two components. One that is sort of your, hey, less permanent sign that brings attention to the fact that this project is here. And I say less permanent, I'm talking like 10 years of life, where a plaque that wants to commemorate the origin of the funding and things like that will last for forever. But it will be, like I said, that by their very nature, they're not very dynamic and therefore they're generally not really read too much, so that's my 2 cents worth. And they're also sort of pricey. Again, they're buying a permanent thing. And no one here locally actually makes them. You buy them from two national vendors that make them. If you're doing a cast plaque. So their pricing is based on square inches and number of letters. So you get like 160 letters or 260 letters or something in your base price. And after that, they charge additional charge per character. So, and per any graphic and things like that. So they can go from like a $300 thing to a $2,500 thing pretty quickly and not significant changes in it. So I'm not trying to not sell you on them. I'm just trying to, the limitation of a plaque and the benefit of a plaque. It's, like I said, it's super permanent. So you should keep the messaging concise and make sure that we have a equally permanent place to mount them. Like I said, like a building wall or a large stone that could be set, for example, in a garden or a granite thing.
Andy, the historic commission sponsored signs like the one at the Aqueduct and several other places, is that the same as a plaque?
I think that is, and I think I can't remember the exact. I can't put them into my. I can envision them. I just can't think of the size of them, but they do
they're only a foot wide.
They're roughly, I think, like 18 or 24 inches, maybe 3 feet tall. They're pretty big.
Guess I'm wrong.
Well, I can look them up. I mean, I've got some of the proofs of them. I can try to find some.
You proved my point.
Well, I mean, you know, as an example, they're descriptive and you do have to walk up and read it. And it's not something you pretty much see as you drive by, and that certainly wasn't my intent either. So it was really just, we had talked over the years of creating recognition in town for CPA, and yet I'm sure the people that live in the Main Street apartments, for instance, now, they don't want a 4x8, you know, sign in the front yard. And now that Town Common is up, we wouldn't do that either. It was one thing while it was going in. So, you know, as we go in the future, if something is being built and it's CPA sponsored, then the small in the ground campaign sign type is big enough for me, right? In most cases.
That or the banner, the banners are good bang for the buck in terms of size and durability. They'll last,
Right.
They can last years actually outside, and if, mounted in a situation, but like 2 years. And the plaque, like I said, most plaques the plaque itself comes with a lifetime warranty. So, and I think the ones at the historical, they're purchasing the pole that comes specifically with the plaque. And so it comes with the proper bracketing and things like that.
Sure. I'll put
Because
some
I think,
in.
again,
I get why they're more expensive than I always think they should be now. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that really in my mind, it was, you walk up to, to a trail, you walk in the Green Street Trail Network now, and there's a nice sign put up by the Trails Committee, is something put on their post that, this partially funded by CPA. And then those affordable housing projects. And then, like I say, the idea came up around the Town Common, which, it's not so much this year, but years ahead, you walk in, you say, oh, this was a CPA project. I know that there, like I mentioned, there's a plaque underway and the wording was bantered about, and somewhere in it, it's just, it thanks the Community Preservation Committee, or the Community Preservation Act. So perhaps that's good enough in the case of the Town Common.
So John, is it possible we can just sort of think about this in future projects? And if there's one project that we approve that involves some public visibility, then we could go ahead and procure an appropriate size sign for that project, just for that purpose.
Totally fine. Just wanted to throw the idea out there. And again,
Yep.
It was raised around the Town Common where
that would have been a good opportunity.
Yeah, and the common is nice now and it exists, and the memorial area looks really nice. And I guess Town Common Committee is sponsoring a plaque that does acknowledge the CPA. And I don't know where that's going to go, but I'm perfectly fine leaving it at that.
Okay.
but you have projects like the library where a good example of plaque. And actually, if it's interior, the restoration of this reading room or whatever it is sponsored by that, you can go with a less expensive version of that. And it'll last forever as well in an interior situation. And it can be mounted to the sheetrock wall and things like that. And those things go off at like a quarter of the price of a cast plaque, So that would be a good location for where you could have it, and people are in the close enough proximity to the messaging that they gonna read it, and see it, or at least have an opportunity to read it and see it. Whereas if you drive by, the housing on Main Street, you're not gonna step up there and see it unless it's on the stone wall or something like that, where you're gonna walk by and see it itself.
Right.
You're not going to intrude on their private space to read something of that nature.
I guess the only other
I
thought.
you could think of other locations that we've done, the fields, the middle school fields and things like that, where you could mount it on a granite on like a granite block or something like that, that would give it, permanence and things like that. And that would give it recognition.
Sure. Okay, good thoughts. Someone was just forward thinking, always thinking about giving visibility to what CPA does in town. We've had an unprecedented run of positive votes at town meeting, and something tells me it can't last forever. Years from now, hopefully the different generation starts voting, and different people don't know what CPA is, and somewhere along the line, there'll be objections to, why am I paying for this? It's almost been assumed in town that it's, taken for granted, but I never want to think that way. And other than town meeting, I feel like there's no publicity around what the CPA has done for Northborough, which has been good stuff. So we'll carry that forward to the next season or the next meeting. And I have nothing further unless, Leslie, go ahead.
Yes, to that point, actually, I mean, the community advocate, I think, is always looking for, article ideas, maybe a community advocate article about CPA and what, at some point, how to promote our projects throughout time. I mean, the historic, Norm's always writing stuff for historic, so historic markers are always getting publicity, but CPA really hasn't.
Are you
Except
a good writer?
indirectly through the markers have.
Are you a good writer?
I'm not. I'm a good editor.
Here we go.
And I can always do better on, promoting it on the town's website. So that's, that's something else to consider. Again, I know that's not, not everyone uses a website, but anymore, but that's certainly one place where we can promote it much better than I do now.
That's not, I'm not add to your long list either, but maybe display of prominent photos and so on, things like that we can think about.
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
We'll move that ahead down the road, and as you said, no visual presentations at town meetings, so we'll leave it at that. But the handout, I will try to. When you said this week, that's Thursday for you, right?
For me?
To get you a handout in time for printing for town meeting.
Well, if we shoot, yes, where the town hall's closed on this particular Friday. That's just how the July 4th holiday closes. But if you can get me something by Monday, John, that's because I'll be doing my zoning packets, but at the end of this week, beginning of Monday, beginning of next week. So that works.
If I have till Monday morning, then I'll have it in your hands, and
that works.
that'd be great. And also I'll send you the
Something with a
PowerPoint
web.
direct and see if David can incorporate it online.
Yep. Okay.
Very well. I have nothing further. Thank you all for making time tonight, and anybody that was listening, thank you for listening in. I don't see any other hands up or public comment.
This isn't CPC news, but I just received an email, in case anyone can't go to bed tonight, that Jason Perot and Scott Rogers are the two new selectmen.
Oh,
so
good.
Jason was reelected and Scott was elected.
Good. And
That's
what about
great.
planning board?
I didn't get that message.
Okay, all right.
But I'm certainly assuming, I know I shouldn't be assuming, but
Yeah.
I'm certainly assuming that Amy and Millie
Right.
were elected and reelected for their
Yeah,
seats.
that's my assumption too. Yep.
Well, congratulations to all. That's good news. And very good. If nothing else, I recommend we adjourn. I don't know if we need a motion, but we can have fun with that.
Yeah, yes, you do need to do that, John. It
So
has to
moved.
be a voice.
Second.
Leslie moved that we adjourn. Jeff seconded. And we'll need to vote. Leslie,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Andy. Andy, you want to adjourn?
Yes.
And me, yes. Thank you all again. Good night.
Thank you,
Night,
John.
everybody.
Good night.
Night,
So long.
everyone.
Bye-bye.